I really love weird Japanese devices. This mini computer, for example, was only released in Japan. It's a late model Sharp Zorus, and it includes a built-in hard drive with a decent capacity for a pocket computer in 2005. But even better is it can do this. Now, I'd love to show this working, but it's faulty and it stops during startup. It looks like it has some sort of drive error while it's booting up. And I knew this was the case when I bought it because sometimes I buy interesting but faulty devices. And if I can fix this, then I found a bargain. I had a very close listen to the hard drive sound. It sounds like it's spinning up okay, but then it spins down as soon as the error appears. I can't really tell from the sound if the hard drive is the problem, but since I am able to access the boot restore menu, there's a good chance I can get this working again. But I have 3 big challenges facing me with this. First, this is running a Linux-based OS, which is flexible and open, but also complicated and time-consuming to deal with. Second is the age. After 20 years, you can expect many forums and online resources to have disappeared, or at least be really difficult to find. Thirdly, most of the information that has survived about this is in Japanese. Unfortunately, I'm unable to read or speak Japanese. Yet despite all these problems, I seem to have a sort of a strange love for these sorts of things. There were earlier models of Zorus that were sold outside of Japan that are in English, but they are not as common as these Japanese models, and due to low sales numbers, Zorus was discontinued outside of Japan, leaving these later models, such as the one I have here, to be Japan exclusive. But the good news is that because these run Linux, there was a thriving grey market for imports and enthusiasts developing English-based ROMs to install over the Japanese system, and they were doing translation for a lot of the information and manuals. Though I'm not sure if they are an exact translation. For example, this manual here says, yes, there's a 4GB microdrive made by Hitachi integrated into the Zorus. No, it's not a good idea to open the Zorus to look at where it is and play with it. So let's take this Zorus apart. We'll get that microdrive out and have a play with it. I'm really keen to have a look inside. With just a few screws, the back comes off really easily. So far so good, but now I'm going to have to be really careful with these ribbon cables by first very carefully unlatching their connectors. Then the motherboard comes out, and we get our first look at that 4GB micro drive. But there's one more ribbon cable holding the board in, and this uses a different latch to the other two. It's always worth taking the time to very carefully unlatch these sorts of connectors. A broken latch or a torn ribbon would end this. And this latch lifts up from underneath, which is fairly uncommon. I now just have to remove this black plastic, which includes the SD card slot, and we're in. This looks like a Samsung flash chip. This must be the 128 megabytes of flash memory. There are also 3 Sharp branded chips in here. Okay, it's time to get this drive out. And the board under the hard drive looks like it was designed for other chip mountings. I wonder if this board was used in some of the other Zorus models in different configurations. And here's the 4GB mechanical microdrive in a compact flash compatible size and connector. These microdrives were used in the early 2000s for larger capacities before flash memory caught up. They were found in a number of consumer electronics, in things like the iPod mini. For testing, I'm going to use this Toshiba Lifebook. It has both an SD card slot and a compact flash slot. And even better is it can do this. Windows Disk Management, it shows this drive seems to still be working, even though it appears to be unformatted. This drive doesn't seem to do any smart reporting. Perhaps testing this with Linux might be a better choice. I would like to try a more permanent install of Linux on my Lifebook, but there's no easy way to get the touchscreen working, or use the hardware buttons for rotating and other functions. But interestingly, I find the brightness control is working. Okay, this micro drive seems to be formatted to ext3. It's just a single partition with no files on it, and it's working okay. Even though it's working, I've decided not to put it back in the Zorus. I'm going to replace this micro drive with a 4GB compact flash card. With everything back together, it's perhaps not that surprising that it's still not starting. I'm getting the exact same hard drive error. I'm now going to turn my attention to the operating system, which is stored in 128 megabytes of flash memory. So I'm going to try replacing the operating system by flashing a new ROM. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be detecting this SD card. It didn't take me too long to work out that the capacity of this SD card is just too big for the Zorus. For booting in restore mode, you can only use SD cards up to a maximum of 1GB. And with this card, it seems to detect OK, and then boot the Zorus into restore mode. And I get into the Kakao install menu. Then it's just a simple matter of letting the installer do its thing. The installer suggests I also wipe the user partition, but again it's not starting, and it still seems to have a hard drive error. I had to do quite a bit of investigation at this point. It turns out that both the original Sharp operating system and this Kakao ROM both require 2 additional partitions on the internal hard drive. Also, some system files need to be copied to these 2 partitions. And fortunately, there's a backup of these 2 files still available at trysoft.de. I'd be pretty much lost without these. I then tried using the console provided with the Kakao installer, and I was able to create the 2 partitions. Linux is really not that bad once you get used to it. But after formatting these 2 partitions, I was unable to copy the system files over, and I kept getting errors. Maybe I had made a formatting mistake, or I didn't mount the partitions properly. I also tried taking the compact flash card out again and using the Lifebook running Linux, and I was able to copy the files into the correct partitions. But after doing all this, it's still not booting, though I am getting a slightly different drive error this time. Unfortunately, I can't work out what's going on, and by this point I have become extremely frustrated, and I'm now overcome with feelings of regret for buying this stupid thing. Eventually, I come back to it, and after lots of searching, I find this Japanese tutorial on setting up the internal hard drive. Thank you to whoever wrote this tutorial, and thank you for the translation tools that we have access to today. The procedure requires flashing the unit back to its stock Japanese configuration. And again, trysoft.de have a backup. This also requires entering a diagnostic service menu by holding down the D and M buttons and pressing a hidden reset button in the battery compartment. This menu has lots of really interesting options, but I have to be very careful. It's possible to completely erase the internal flash memory using this service manual. This removes everything, even this service manual, and including the bootloader, which means you would then have a complete brick. Now, the user manual mentions that there is a JTAG interface on the back. In theory, it might be possible to recover a brick, but without any software or documentation on doing that, I don't like the chances of that being doable. But I don't have any other options at this point, so I'm going to try flashing the original Japanese system into this Zorus. The process takes quite a while, but seems to have worked. The system is now booting up. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing here. But I'm not quite out of the woods yet, because I still need to copy the missing system files to the partitions on the internal drive, or the system won't start up the next time I reboot. Yes, I found this out the hard way. I now need access to a terminal, but Sharp didn't include a terminal in their operating system by default. Though to their credit, they did include one on the original CD that came with the Zorus. I then had to learn how to remount the partitions as writable and copy the system files onto them. And that's it, I've done it. I can now reboot the system just as it was when it came out of the factory. I'm really pleased that I've repaired my Sharp Zorus. I've restored it to its original system, and in that process I've upgraded the mechanical microdrive to a solid-state flash drive. I should now be able to install Cacao Linux again and hopefully have it work. It goes through the setup process again, and this time it actually works and it's booting into the graphical user interface. Having a quick look through the options, and it looks like this has a number of additions over the stock Japanese Sharp ROM. Checking out the settings window and the system info option, we can see the system is running on 64 kilobytes of RAM. The CPU is an Intel X-Scale ARM-based CPU, which is shown here running at 416 MHz. I understand this CPU can be overclocked to over 600 MHz, and it looks like the tools to do that are included in this Linux distribution. Overall, this is a really decent mini computer. I do have one mild gripe though, and that's the 4:3 aspect ratio screen. From the size of those really wide side bezels, it looks like it should be a wide 16:9 screen, and I don't know if it's because I'm looking at this with modern eyes, so I'm not going to hold this against a device from 2005. Also, these clamshell Zorus models were based on earlier portrait-style Zorus models, which all used a 4:3, or in their case, a 3:4 aspect ratio screen. These earlier models also seem to be why minigames only run in portrait mode, which on this Zorus makes them really hard to play, with the controls not going in the right direction. There do seem to be some landscape-based games, such as Power Manga, though the controls with this game still seem to be wrong. There is a port of Doom, though I was unable to get it to run. That's on me though, because I may not have set it up properly. However, I was able to get Heretic to run on here, which I think is a modified version of Doom. Again though, it only seems to run in portrait mode, and the screen seems to be cut off on the right side. I did have a look through all the settings in the games and the system. I did try switching it to landscape mode, but I couldn't find many options to fix a lot of these problems. That being said, there do seem to be a number of decent games available for this system, though I haven't found many yet that I'm really keen on. While this was mainly sold as a business organizer, it's the computer functions that make this really interesting. In Japan, these were typically also used with a compact flash-based wireless card, either Wi-Fi or with a telephone network. The system has full internet and includes a web browser, making for quite a powerful little system. Now, I do have a compact flash-based Wi-Fi card. It's this SparkLAN, but disappointingly, I can't find any compatible drivers to use this card in the Zorus. I believe this card is a few years newer than the Zorus, which might explain the lack of drivers, though it's still quite disappointing. Fortunately though, the Zorus does include a built-in infrared port. Infrared networking is a very old wireless standard, and it's something I want to set up and get working one day on a range of devices, including now this Zorus. Until then, I'm going to enjoy exploring what this fun little computer can do. It's got good media support and can play back many video formats.
I don't like the look of this, Fred. I tell you what you better do, old buddy.
I was under the impression that I was the only one in authority to order the use of nuclear weapons.
It looks like we're in a shooting war. Oh, hell.
If you have any suggestions for what I can do with this cool Linux-based system, then do let me know in the comments. I read every comment and I reply to as many as I can. But that's it for the moment, and I'll see you next time.